Um, I'm part of the education team here at Bike Walk. Mark and I are going to be leading this course. Just wanted to give just a little background. All of this particular class got really full, so we're really excited. There's like, oh gosh, I want to say like 30 or 40 people that signed up, and we got your feedback about all the things that you guys want to learn about, and it totally fits with the curriculum of what we're going to be going through today. All of your microphones and cameras are going to be turned off and will remain off for the whole presentation. If you have something that's like that you want to chat about, like a quick question, you can use that chat feature. But really what's been proven to be helpful, especially with this many participants, is to ask something in the Q&A feature, especially if it's a little bit more specific to your bike. And then I can try to tackle that issue with you. But kind of more generally type things, you're welcome to just throw into the chat. And I'll be interrupting Mark to kind of help filter in your questions as we go along, because he'll be going along with his program. So just wanted to let you guys know that at the very end, we'll have some time to offer some more specific Q&As, and we'll activate your microphone if we really need to. But we're going to cap it at 1:30. The program is normally about an hour-ish, kind of runs a little long, but then we'll have that time afterwards. But then if, say, we really don't get to the question that you have, or you really just kind of want some more one-on-one guidance, we will be offering Bike Talk on Monday, this coming Monday, which will be 15-minute little sessions that you could give a suggested donation about, where Mark and I will kind of more specifically dive into a particular issue you're having, and you can even like have your bike in the Zoom call and like show us what's going on, or say if it's something more specific about trails or gear, whatever. So just wanted to let you guys know that. But this Maintain Your Ride class is a prereq for that anyway, so it's good that y'all are here. So just to kind of start out, my name is Suzanne Hogan. Like I said, I've been a mechanic for 15-ish years, working in shops in New Mexico and in Kansas City. I've been with Bike Walk for a few years, helping in their education program, and then I'm also a mechanic at the 816 Bicycle Collective, which is a DIY community bicycle shop. So, and then Mark will introduce himself in just a minute, but we're going to be going over bike tools and vocabulary. We'll be covering air, brakes, chain, shifting kind of 101, some do's and don'ts, cleaning and lubing. And based off of the poll results, it looks like we have quite a range of people as far as your experiences and questions. And so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, I'm going to turn off my screen sharing. It'll probably take me a second. You'd think that we'd like by now have this all figured out, but Zoom is still kind of a crazy beast for us. So all right, here we are. Okay, so hi, I'm Suzanne. Looks like we have 13 people now, and I'll kind of keep reminding, like I said, you can use that chat feature for little things, but really that Q&A is preferred. So Mark, I'm going to spotlight you and take it away.
All right, good afternoon. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We usually have two cameras going on, kind of a bigger field camera and then a kind of a closer zoom camera, and I'm having problems logging in on my widescreen camera. So you're going to have to deal with my laptop view here, and we'll just adjust it for what we're doing. My name's Mark. Yeah, I'm a bicycle mechanic with Bike Walk KC. I have professional experience in the industry, and we're going to go through some basic maintenance on your bikes going forward. So we had some questionnaires, questionnaire we put out, and you guys put on things that you were seeking to learn in this class, and I kind of wrote down 5 of the kind of main things people talked about or asked about, and that's all things that we are going to cover today. Flats, how to repair a flat, how to adjust your gears, how to adjust your brakes, some chain maintenance, and then maybe shifting techniques or how to shift your gears properly. So I'm going to kind of jump into that because I want to make sure that we have time to hit all of those. So real quick, I just want you guys to know if you're doing any maintenance, any mechanical maintenance on your bike, all fasteners on a bicycle are metric. So every tool you will need will be a metric tool. You'll want to have a set of maybe some hex keys, otherwise called Allen wrenches. They're metric. 4, 5, and 6 millimeter are pretty much your most important and main ones you're going to use. You're also going to use potentially if you have a bolt-on axle front or rear, that's a 15 millimeter is what it is. So I always keep a combination wrench 15 millimeter to take off your front or rear axle if they're bolt-on. Another thing you might need that's kind of a specialty tool is a pedal wrench. A pedal wrench is a 15 millimeter. It is very thin because you can't always get a combination wrench in to take a pedal off. And then other than that, screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches, they're all, wrenches would be metric or adjustable wrenches. Other thing you'll want to have and get handy with, and we'll talk about this a little more in detail, is a tire lever. So tire lever is something you want to keep in your flat kit. You'll want to keep it at home so you can take that tire off to replace a tube or fix a tube if you need to. So those are some key tools that you should have if you want to do any work. All right, so when we talk about maintaining your bike, we want to talk about, first thing you want to do is you want to assess your bike anytime you ride it. And we have a method that we teach called the ABC Quick Check. You heard Suzanne allude to it. It's really simple, kind of elementary type deal, but A is for air, B would be for brakes, C would be for chain. Quick is the quick release, and check yourself, meaning make sure that your helmet's on or you don't have anything that's going to get caught in the bike. So I'm going to dive right into it, and we're going to start with the A. A is anything to do with the tires, so it's air. Let's talk about tires and tubes really quick to get started. This is I'm going to show you a tire. Every tire is going to have either a hot patch like this on glued to the outside of it, or it'll have some sort of text printed or built into the mold. Let's see if you can see this right here. Talks about inflation. So any tire you have is going to tell you what size it is. It's also going to tell you how much air pressure to put in it. I use this as a demonstration because it has it both printed right there, very easy to read. So this tire is a 26-inch diameter, and it's a 1.5-inch wide tire. 1.5 inches wide, okay? And then when you put a tube in it, you want to inflate it to between 45 and 85 PSI. Now I'm going to recommend you do not inflate this to the absolute maximum. That's a range. You should be somewhere above the minimum and somewhere below the maximum. Usually somewhere right in the middle is ideal. I'm going to show you another thing real quick before we get into actually changing a tire or changing a tube. We're going to talk about valves. So here are two different types of valves. Let me tip this down so you don't have to look at my. All right, two different types of valves. This valve here is what we call Schrader. It's your typical valve, same thing that's on your car tire. Okay, you can put any kind of air compressor head on that, and you can inflate this. This type of valve here, skinnier, usually has this little cap on it. This is what we call Presta. All right, Presta and Schrader, they effectively do the same thing. They have the same innards. It's just the Presta is a skinnier type of valve stem, so it fits in narrower wheels. And then this is Schrader. So if you were going to change a tube, replace the tube, you need to know which style valve stem you need, and then you need to know what size tube based on your tire size. The other thing is all tubes should have their size printed on them. This is a specific Schwinn 1¼ inch, 27 by 1¼ inch tube. And this other tube, this Presta-Valve tube, see if I can find it. This is a 700, which is a tire size, by 28 to 32 C. All right, so that tells you what size tube you have, and it's going to be based on what size tire you're putting the tube into.
Mark, can I jump in? One thing, what I would say to people when they weren't sure about the size is to just look for the X on there. That first number is going to be the diameter. The second number is going to be your width. It is really important to note that that's not just interchangeable. And when in doubt, you can always just write down like everything on there and take it to a shop, and they'll be able to find what tube you need.
All right, we're going to dive into replacing a tube in a tire, taking a tire off and putting a tire back on. So I'm going to tip this down so you can see a little better. I'm going to deflate this because we're assuming that we're replacing a tube because you have a flat. All right, so this is fully deflated. This is where my tire levers come in. So a tire lever is going to have two ends. I call it the hook end and the spoon end. Okay, in order to take a tire off, don't drop it on the floor. I'm going to take the spoon end, and I'm going to stick it underneath the edge of the tire. I can do this. Man, I do not like this camera angle. Okay, I'm going to stick it underneath the edge of the tire, and then I'm going to take the hook end and hook it onto the spoke. All right, that'll hold that in place. You take your second tire lever, you stick it in the gap next to the first one, and you pull it towards you or away from you. Either way will work, whatever you're comfortable with. And just keep pushing it away, and you will pull that tire off of the rim. So now the tire is off the rim. Now, whenever I'm changing the tube, I will only pull the tire off one side. I will leave the tire on the rim on the other side there. And so what I'll do now is I'll kind of peel the tire away a little bit, grab the tube, and pull it out. Okay, there's the tube. There's the wheel with the tire still installed on one side. Okay, now if you have a flat, you need to kind of figure out why you have a flat. If there's something that's stuck through the tire, you need to remove it. You can visually inspect it. You can take your hands and very carefully rub your hand on the inside of that tire and feel for anything poking through. Be aware that if something's poking through, it'll probably catch your finger. So there are other ways you could stick a rag or something in there and it'll catch, but find whatever was poking through, or you can put a little air in this tube and see if the hole presents itself. One method I use whenever I install my tires, I found this to be very helpful, is I always put the label. So there's the label of the tire. If I tip this up, you'll see that there is the valve hole. I always match the label with the valve hole so that whenever I take a tube out, if I put a little air in it and if I find the hole, I can match that valve up with the label, and then I can find where the hole would be in the tire. It's just a good reference point. All right, so let's assume that we have figured out that there was something maybe poking through. We've removed that, so the tire is now free of any kind of anything poking through. So then we're going to put a new tube in. So where I start is I take the tire and I kind of peel it back and expose the valve hole. And I poke that valve in. Okay, and now I will take and I will pull that tire out and start tucking the tube up into the tire. Now, it does help if that tube has just a little bit of air in it, so it has a little bit of body. If it was a brand new tube you just pulled out of a box, it's going to be like have a vacuum in there. It's going to be flat, and it won't just kind of tuck into the tire as easily. So putting a couple pumps of air would help it quite a bit. So I've got the tube tucked into the tire now. I am going to start at the valve. I'm going to kind of push that valve up a little bit, get the tire put over the rim, and then I'm working around until I get to the opposite side. And now I need to use my tire levers again. So again, I want to use that spoon end of the tire lever. I'm going to stick it in and catch the rim, and I'm going to pry the tire on, and of course it pulls off the other side. Tire is being rather difficult with me right now.
I could also jump in. I mean, yeah, it's ideal to not use a tire lever to put it on if you can help it, just not so you can not pinch. But sometimes it's just so hard. So you just have to really be careful as you're using the lever to just make sure that you're not getting a little bit of tube in between that bead and the rim, because then you kind of undo everything you just did.
Yeah, you got to kind of feel to make sure you've got that tire lever just on the rim and not catching tube also. And then there, tire's on. So now we inflate it.
Can I jump in again, Mark? So we have one question from Sean about replacing a tube from a tubeless ready rim, saying they're really hard to get off. And I was just wondering if you could just show like using leverage points on your tire, or you know, like how you can use multiple tire levers on a really tight fit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you just want to demo that quick, or I also
So
just
tubeless tires are going to be a little bit tighter, and especially on a tubeless rim, tubeless tire. They're going to be tighter, so you're going to need to use your tire levers, and
I mean, tubeless is kind of a little more advanced. I mean, would you say, like, as far as
tubeless is a little more advanced, but yeah, tubeless tires, you're going to need a tire lever for the most part to get it off. And it's about getting that. These tires are like the worst.
Maybe that's good because it shows that sometimes it's hard.
I can break off a tire without tire levers pretty much any time, but this tire and this rim combination. Okay, so to take off a tubeless tire, man, I would still take it off the same way.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, using leverage, or you can use 3 tire levers, like where you say, like, you know, try to put them on more spokes to just kind of pry it off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So to put it on, I mean, this is kind of tough, like a tubeless tire is. And I'll just kind of work it with my hands until I just can't get it anymore. And then you got to kind of hold it so it doesn't come off, and you're really having to work it sometimes. And there, I just popped the tube using the tire lever.
Yeah, good demo of what not to do.
Awesome.
But
right, let's try a different tire because I want to show you how to inflate.
No, so basically he pinched it, Melissa. Like, so part of when he was putting it back on, part of the tube got pinched between the bead of the tire and the rim, and that'll puncture the tube.
I was trying to do things fast and not really paying attention, and
I think the key
got
with
the
a lot of this stuff is like using strength where you can, but taking your time and like understanding sometimes it's just working your wrists slowly and trying to, just move things along. It's not always easy. And like I mentioned to Sean earlier, it's better to break tire levers. It's okay to break tire levers. They're made out of plastic. It's better to do that than to like, damage your rim or mess up your tube, I
So
guess.
here's a demonstration of a difference in a tire that's relatively easy to take off. This tire I can take off without a tire lever just by, I mean, it's easy to take off. I don't know if you guys can see that that's off, and then put it on. You can really just do it with your hands, and it's back on. That previous one is a challenging kind of situation. So let's put some air in this tire here so I can demonstrate how to use a pump. I want everybody to understand. A floor pump you're going to find is going to have a head similar to this. Okay, this lever pulls up. That lever is what locks it onto the valve stem. I guess older style pumps, it was opposite. It would start like this and you'd push it down to lock it on. Modern pumps, you start with that lever down. You just stick it on the valve head, pull that lever up like that, and you can't see the pump that I have below the screen, but I have a floor pump, and I'm going to pump it up middle of that inflation range. Okay, and when I get it to that point, I close that lever, pop that head off, and now we have air. If you're using a hand pump, I'll show you a couple versions of hand pumps. A lot of people will carry these types of pumps with them on their bike. Usually there's a little clip holds it on the frame. This hand pump, same situation, has a little lever on it. Open it to lock it on, close it to unlock it. It has an extension like this. This is where your handle and your pump is. This is a good style pump. It's simple. They're relatively inexpensive. You can carry them with you, and if you get it flat on the road, you can inflate your tires yourself. Another style of little mini pump, one I kind of prefer, not specifically this brand, but this style. It's same concept, but this has a flexible tube, flexible hose that you can install, so it puts less stress on the valve stem when you're installing it. This is primarily a Presta-Valve inflator, but this style pump with the flexible hose is ideal if you can go that route.
And
Okay.
don't use gas station pumps if you can avoid it. They inflate things too quickly and you're really likely to just blow up your tire. I mean, in a pinch do it, but understand that they inflate very quickly. So using some type of floor pump or something you carry with you is way better than using that.
Okay, did anybody have any other questions about tires, tubes? I'm going to talk about patching a tube real quick. So where's my other patches? Okay. Patch kits. This is a patch kit by Park Tool. It's pretty much like it's the best one that's out there. Inside this patch kit, you'll have your little rubber cement, your vulcanizing cement. You'll have a series of different patch sizes, and you'll have a little piece of sandpaper in there. I'm not going to demonstrate exactly how to patch right now because that takes a little while. There's a little piece of sandpaper. But in my flat kit on my bike, I carry one of these little patch kits. All right. A new tube, couple tire levers, a little mini tool, and then some way to inflate my tires. Patching a tire or patching a tube takes patience. You cannot rush it. You cannot make it go any faster than what it takes for that glue to dry and put a patch on. So carry a new tube with you, replace a punctured tube with a new tube first, and save that old tube, and then patch the second one the second time you get it flat if you have to. Another option that are out there are these little itty bitty self-adhesive patches. All right, they're quick. They take up less space in your kit. The problem is these are not permanent. These will get you home, but they will not stick to that tube forever. You will need to do an actual vulcanizing tube at some point. So if you get these little style self-adhesive patches, understand that they're really just a band-aid. They're not a fix. Okay. All right. Let's move on. If we don't have any other questions or anybody wants to see anything more about changing tires or tubes.
Say move.
All right. Okay, let's go into brakes. Okay, so ABC quick check. Our second thing is the B for brakes. We're going to talk about brakes. We're going to talk about brake pads. And then we can talk about some brake adjustments. Let me grab a little demonstration pieces here. Having that second screen is so helpful. Okay, so there's several different things out there anymore. You've got your older style kind of mountain cantilever brakes, which looked like this. Okay, they would be mounted on little posts on either side of your fork or either side of your seat stays, and they would pinch the rim, all right, and apply braking force to the rim. You also have more of a road style brake caliper. You would pull on the brake cable and it would pinch them together and braking force against the rim. You also have disc brakes. Disc brakes have a brake caliper. It's a miniature version of what's in your car. I don't know if you can see that little pad moving in there. And you have a disc rotor mounted to the hub of your wheel. The rotor runs through the caliper like that. It is just a miniature version of what's on your car. All right, there are different pads for every different style of brake. You'll have your old style mountain pads that'll be like this. You also have some that are longer, have this longer end to them. Okay, road style brakes will look like this. Okay, you have mountain style, and then you have another mountain style like this that is like a cartridge. The brake pad is just this sliver of a pad that slides in and out of this metal shoe that holds it. Okay, but effectively they are the same. It's just one is a one-piece unit and one is a cartridge where all you replace is just the brake pad. All right, what we're looking for in a brake pad, if we're checking our brakes to make sure that they are working, I'll demonstrate how to do that. But while I have my pads in front of me, what you're looking for on your pads is a couple things. That is a brand new brake pad. You have these cuts in here. Those cuts serve a couple purposes. For one, they're like a wear indicator. They tell you when the brake pad is worn out, when those slits are gone. Or they are a relief cut that allows the material that's being like worn off. It gives a place for the material to go. Here is a pad that is worn out. There are no more relief cuts. It's been wearing a little uneven because you can see that it's kind of angled like that. So this brake pad I would replace. It is no longer good. You'll also see how it's kind of shiny here on this end. It's getting kind of worn out and hard. You know, if it gets that glaze on it, it's hardening, so it won't be soft and catch. Another thing you're going to look for, excuse me, in a brake pad is the little bits of metal that you might find stuck in the brake pad. You want to remove those. If you continue to use your brakes and jam that metal into your metal braking surface of your rim, you will just destroy your rim. So I just use a little pick, something, pick those little pieces of metal out, and then you can continue to use your brake pads. But you're looking for metal or any kind of contaminant. You want to remove that, and you want to make sure that you still have those slits in there for wear indicator. Let's talk about disc brakes. So this is what a disc brake pad, or one type of a disc brake pad, much thinner. Okay, these two pads here would go together like that, one on either side of the rotor, and they would be separated by this spring in this type of setup. Not all disc brake pads have this little spring. Okay, but that's now where when do we know that the disc brake pads are worn out? If the pad material is less than the width of the little spring, if you can see that in the camera, then your pad is worn out. As long as there is material that is thicker than the width of that spring, it should work. I'm sure that each manufacturer, each pad manufacturer has their specific recommendations of pad thickness and that. But my rule of thumb is, if I take my pads out and there's still enough meat that it's above that little spring thickness, then I can continue to use that pad. If it's getting really close, then I know that I need to order some pads so that I have them when the pads finally wear out. This style of brake, disc brake caliper, you will see, I think you guys can see this. When I engage, you'll see that only one pad moves. This pad will move sideways. This pad is kind of fixed. So one pad will wear out a little bit faster than the other. It's the one that's being moved a little bit more because it'll force the rotor across and touch the fixed pad. So your moving pad will generally wear out quicker than the other. All right. And also, as these pads wear out, you need to adjust where this pad is. So there's a little adjustment over here. You can turn that and it'll bring this pad out a little bit as it wears down. If you don't do that, then you'll just drive the rotor sideways into the body of the caliper. So there's a little bit of a maintenance that needs to be done on these type of disc brake calipers. Let's move on if we don't have any other questions or anybody wants to see anything more about changing tires or tubes.
Say move.
All right. Okay, let's go into brakes. Okay, so ABC quick check. Our second thing is the B for brakes. We're going to talk about brakes. We're going to talk about brake pads. And then we can talk about some brake adjustments. Let me grab a little demonstration pieces here. Having that second screen is so helpful. Okay, so there's several different things out there anymore. You've got your older style kind of mountain cantilever brakes, which looked like this. Okay, they would be mounted on little posts on either side of your fork or either side of your seat stays, and they would pinch the rim, all right, and apply braking force to the rim. You also have more of a road style brake caliper. You would pull on the brake cable and it would pinch them together and braking force against the rim. You also have disc brakes. Disc brakes have a brake caliper. It's a miniature version of what's in your car. I don't know if you can see that little pad moving in there. And you have a disc rotor mounted to the hub of your wheel. The rotor runs through the caliper like that. It is just a miniature version of what's on your car. All right, there are different pads for every different style of brake. You'll have your old style mountain pads that'll be like this. You also have some that are longer, have this longer end to them. Okay, road style brakes will look like this. Okay, you have mountain style, and then you have another mountain style like this that is like a cartridge. The brake pad is just this sliver of a pad that slides in and out of this metal shoe that holds it. Okay, but effectively they are the same. It's just one is a one-piece unit and one is a cartridge where all you replace is just the brake pad. All right, what we're looking for in a brake pad, if we're checking our brakes to make sure that they are working, I'll demonstrate how to do that. But while I have my pads in front of me, what you're looking for on your pads is a couple things. That is a brand new brake pad. You have these cuts in here. Those cuts serve a couple purposes. For one, they're like a wear indicator. They tell you when the brake pad is worn out, when those slits are gone. Or they are a relief cut that allows the material that's being like worn off. It gives a place for the material to go. Here is a pad that is worn out. There are no more relief cuts. It's been wearing a little uneven because you can see that it's kind of angled like that. So this brake pad I would replace. It is no longer good. You'll also see how it's kind of shiny here on this end. It's getting kind of worn out and hard. You know, if it gets that glaze on it, it's hardening, so it won't be soft and catch. Another thing you're going to look for, excuse me, in a brake pad is the little bits of metal that you might find stuck in the brake pad. You want to remove those. If you continue to use your brakes and jam that metal into your metal braking surface of your rim, you will just destroy your rim. So I just use a little pick, pick those little pieces of metal out, and then you can continue to use your brake pads. But you're looking for metal or any kind of contaminant. You want to remove that, and you want to make sure that you still have those slits in there for wear indicator. Let's talk about disc brakes. So this is what a disc brake pad, or one type of a disc brake pad, much thinner. Okay, these two pads here would go together like that, one on either side of the rotor, and they would be separated by this spring in this type of setup. Not all disc brake pads have this little spring. Okay, but that's now where when do we know that the disc brake pads are worn out? If the pad material is less than the width of the little spring, if you can see that in the camera, then your pad is worn out. As long as there is material that is thicker than the width of that spring, it should work. I'm sure that each manufacturer, each pad manufacturer has their specific recommendations of pad thickness and that. But my rule of thumb is if I take my pads out and there's still enough meat that it's above that little spring thickness, then I can continue to use that pad. If it's getting really close, then I know that I need to order some pads so that I have them when the pads finally wear out. This style of brake, disc brake, caliper, you will see, I think you guys can see this. When I engage, you'll see that only one pad moves. This pad will move sideways. This pad is kind of fixed. So one pad will wear out a little bit faster than the other. It's the one that's being moved a little bit more because it'll force the rotor across and touch the fixed pad. So your moving pad will generally wear out quicker than the other. All right. And also, as these pads wear out, you need to adjust where this pad is. So there's a little adjustment over here. You can turn that and it'll bring this pad out a little bit as it wears down. If you don't do that, then you'll just drive the rotor sideways into the body of the caliper. So there's a little bit of a maintenance that needs to be done on these type of disc brake calipers. Conversely, I don't know how well this is going to demonstrate. This is a hydraulic disc brake caliper. And I have a handle here because it's a closed system. There's hydraulic fluid running in this hose. As I pull the lever, you should see both pads move. So hydraulic systems, both pads move, they self-center. They're a little bit better for like self-adjusting, but there's a little bit more complicated going on with the hydraulic fluid, whatever that is. All right, let's talk about real quick how I should have started here. But on this little bike I've got hanging back here, you guys probably can't see this. In order for me to check my brakes, first thing I want to do anytime I ride my bike is I want to make sure the brakes work. So what I do is I just grab both brake levers and I just rock the bike back and forth. And if the wheels come up off the ground, then I know my brakes are working. Okay, that's the first line of defense. You can also inspect the brake pads and how they engage the wheel. Let's see if I can relocate this bike and we get a vision of this. So when I pull this brake, you will see that both brake caliper arms are moving. They're both touching the rim at about the same time. Okay, we can talk about, get a little closer here and see if we can actually show you how to make an adjustment on the brakes. Heck, I'll just jam this thing right up here. How about that? That's not a bad image, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a V brake style. It's just like this. Okay, these brake pads, they're one piece. They have a setup just like this, where you're going to have this this bolt here on the back, or this nut on the back, and several sets of washers. The washers need to be installed in a certain order. All right. These two in the center right here, gosh, dog it, where's the camera? These two in the center are conical. They're kind of dome shaped. Okay. And then the ones kind of on the end have a kind of a saucer shape. They're kind of rounded in. All right. There's a thick one. There's a thick one right here and a thinner one right here. Man, I'm sorry for this lighting. They can be flipped back and forth depending on your specific brake setup, but typically wherever they are set up on your bike, just kind of replace them the same way. But you'll want to have those two on one side of the arm and then these two on the other side of the arm. There's a little washer, and then there's your bolt. There's your, your nut right there.
Hey,
in order to adjust.
I was going to say, those used to trip me up a lot. And like, just with a lot of things with this type of stuff, especially now, like doing things like taking a picture on your phone, taking things off in a certain order and placing them in the same order. Like those kind of mechanical best practices will help
Yeah.
you when you're putting things back together. Especially the pictures I found, like a lot when I was learning mechanics a long time ago, that would just be a way to kind of avoid headaches down the road.
So the way I would adjust, if you want to adjust your brake pads and how they hit the rim, I'm going to try to show you here on this. So I think if you can see, that brake pad's a little bit low on this setup. What I'll do is I will engage the brake so it's touching the rim. I will loosen. All right, that nut like that, and then I'll let off the brake just a little bit, which will allow me to kind of move the brake pad. I will line it up so it's on the rim, but kind of at the bottom-ish of the rim. I don't want it touching the tire at all. I will push that brake pad so it's flat against the rim, not at an angle. And then you can see how I'm tightening the brake caliper, and that'll hold it in place until I can tighten that back up. And then it should be straight and squared with that braking surface. So that's how you adjust this style brake. There's another style that looks more like this. It's a true post, and it has I don't have an example of this style here, I'm sorry. It's a little more finicky, but the same concept applies. You'll want to loosen it, push it up against the rim surface, get it flat, and then use the brake itself to hold things in place while you tighten it back down. Road caliper is same concept, done mildly differently, but the same concept. They have little conical washers and whatnot, allows this pad to rotate a little bit, so you can set the angle. Has just a different bolt attachment, but same concept. The idea is to use the brake while it's attached, to set that. Let's talk about disengaging brakes. Quick releases on the brakes cause some people some hangups. So this brake is currently working. If I wanted to disengage this little metal piece right here that curves, we refer to that as the noodle, the brake noodle, and it sits in this this black piece here. It's called the brake, the cradle. So what I do is I'll grab this noodle here, and then I'll grab the cradle and I'll pull them apart, and you'll see that that little piece comes out. I don't know if my fingers got in the way of you guys seeing that, but you'll want to manipulate it by grabbing the noodle. It's hard. It's meant for you to grab it and insert or pull it out of that cradle. That's how you release the brakes, so you can get the wheel out of the bike and past the brake pads.
Mark, we had a question about how to do side-to-side adjustments on that. Could you quickly demonstrate those
Great.
side-to-side screws?
Perfect. So this, see if I can get it lined up just perfectly, because this bike actually shows it very well. Hey, that's not too bad. All right. So brake calipers, those arms like that, they have little adjustment screws. There's one right here and another one here on this side. So those screws, what they do is they adjust the tension on the spring. And if I hope this doesn't make a liar out of me, if I dial this in and add more tension to this side, you will see this arm flex out. Did you see that? I think I saw it. And if I release tension, so it'll pull this arm, which will pull this arm. You're adding tension to that spring, making that spring tighter so it flexes more, okay? So what you want to do is you want to find it so that both arms spring at the same rate. Like this one here, this isn't correct, right? They're not even. This one has too much tension, so it's overpowering the spring tension of the other side. So you want to balance that so that they both move equally, so that they both touch the rim at the same point. My thoughts on these little screws is less is more. So I see a lot of people that bring bikes in with one of the screws dialed all the way in, or both screws dialed all the way in. If you do that, you are going to like over stress that spring. So I would dial spring tension out a little bit so that you're not stressing that spring as much, and just find the balance where they actually flex, they actually spring out, and they spring out at the same rate equally. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, if you have an older bike, it is possible that you will have just some, they're behind these brake calipers, these arms. Here's a picture of an arm off of the bike, okay? Back in here, there's usually some grease. And if it's an older bike, that grease gets gummed up and gunked up, and it prevents this from pivoting smoothly. So if you're having problems with your brakes springing out smoothly, it is okay to just remove them. This is a 5mm. It's almost all bikes have a 5mm bolt here that holds them on. You can disengage your brakes. You can just remove that 5mm bolt, pull that whole brake arm off, clean everything, clean all the gunk off of there, maybe put a little bit of grease, whatever you got, it will work on this situation. Little bit of grease, install it again, put your bolt back in, reconnect your brakes, and test it and see if that didn't help. Sometimes just cleaning up the gunky grease, or maybe there's some rust or anything that's on that post in there, will help the springs work better. All right, that's brakes. That's brake adjustments, how to set the pad using your spring adjustments, and how to correct any brakes that aren't working awesome.
Mark,
Okay.
we had a quick question from Doug, and I just wanted to bring it up. He was asking about this is back to tires.
Yep.
Tire direction, if it doesn't say, a lot of times on your tires, it'll say the direction it's supposed to be rotating, meaning the direction it's supposed to be rolling forward. But if it doesn't have that, it's because some mountain bike tires, it's a little different. But if you
I'll
just
show
want to
you.
kind of
I'll show you
demonstrate
on this
that.
tire right here.
Yeah.
So you can see in the tread, the air. There's usually some sort of an arrow pattern. I mean, it's kind of a. It's some sort of direction, right? So if you look at this tread, you can see that the arrows are kind of pointing forward. So you always want the arrows pointing in the direction the wheel is going. Another quick way to tell which side, if you look at this tire, there is a label right here. If I can flip it around, you'll see that the tire has no label. So if you have a tire that only has a label on one side of the tire, that goes on the drive side. That goes on the same side as the chain and the cassette and all that, okay? So labels always on drive side if it's only on one side, or you can look for the direction of the tread. Tread will usually have some sort of arrow kind of pattern to it, and that should always point forward. Unless you have some mountain bike tires, like Suzanne said, where they put like different tread front and rear, one's more aggressive, it'll specify a direction on that sidewall. All right, let's get into the C of the ABC Quick Check. Get into the drivetrain. I think I'm going to switch this bike out, Suzanne, real quick, and put that other thing in here.
Cool. If I could also just jump in and say, so I understand that a lot of people don't have bike stands at home, and lots of times we're working on our bikes, say like just when they're flipped over on their backs, which is totally fine too. But I kind of forgot to mention that this is a free program through the Johnson County Public Library, and they have now these bike stands in front of the library where you could go and use them. So you could get, say, your bike off the ground to do things like brake adjustments or shifting adjustments. So, and they have like the tools that you would need, for example, like the Allen keys and tire levers. So if you don't have access to those tools, that's something that you can have there. And also you're seeing more of those pop up around the Metro too. So like, I know there's one in Midtown at the Bike Collective, and a couple other spots have pumps and stuff too. So um, just a little side note, but there's nothing wrong with working on your bike also just flipped over on its back too, which can also sometimes help you get your wheels in the dropouts better. That's sometimes the thing people struggle with, getting their wheels back on their bikes and getting in straight, especially when it's elevated like that. So sometimes using gravity when it's flipped on its back can get the wheel in the dropouts so that your wheel isn't straight. All right, that is my spiel.
All right, let's go into, now that I got this all lined up, I want to take it away. We want to talk about chains first and derailleurs before I show the operation. Chain. So a lot of people have questions about chain wear, how long will a chain last? How do I check my chain? How do I take care of my chain? Blah, blah, blah. This is a chain that I have. Let me lift this up. You guys don't need to see my knees all the time. All right. This is a chain I have. This is a worn out chain. One way I can tell that it's worn out is if I turn it on its side, and if I can bend it in a U on its side, I know that that chain is very worn out. The chains are not meant to bend sideways. They're meant to bend with the links like that, right? So if your chain is really floppy, sloppy, bendable, it's probably worn out. You can check your chain with an official chain checker tool. This is a chain checker, okay? There are two different little hooks here. The hooks are, one's a little bit longer than the other. You'll stick it in the chain like that. And this hook should not go through the chain like that. If it goes in like that, that chain is worn out. See, this hook is a little bit longer. It doesn't go in as easy. I can still get it in there, but it's not as easy. So let's talk about parts of a chain. There's a couple little small chains that I use for my demonstration. Here we go. So parts of a chain, turn it on its side. You'll have outer plates, which is that plate that's kind of stamped that has something on it. I can't read it here when it's in this. Okay, is that a Z? Right, so the plates that are stamped with something on them, that's the outer plate. The other plate is the inner plate that connects them together. You have pins going through from one side of the plate to the other. And then in between the pins is the roller bearing. So that is what actually makes contact with the chain, or in the valleys on the cassette or the chain rings. And that is where the lubrication needs to be. It needs to be underneath the roller bearing. You do not need to have chain lube or any kind of grease or anything on the outside of the chain. That is supposed to be made out of a material that will resist rust. It doesn't move, so you do not need to have a bunch of stuff caked on it. You only need your lubrication in there where the roller bearing is. Okay, so we talk about lubes. There are bicycle-specific chain lubes. And the question I get all the time is, wet lube or dry lube? What's the difference? Well, the rule of thumb is if you ride in conditions where it might get wet, you'll want to have a wet lube. This is my wet lube of choice. Just showing I'm not trying to sell the product. This is my favorite wet lube. So if I'm going to ride my bike and I might ride in the rain, or if I'm going to ride my mountain bike and it might get mud on it, anywhere where water or just adverse conditions might encounter my chain, I'm going to use a wet lube. It'll just last longer, and it'll hold up to the water or whatever. This is my favorite dry lube. So if I know I'm going to ride my bike in pristine conditions, I'm never going to take my bike out in the rain or never going to get it nasty, then a dry lube is great. It's got a little liquid in here, and then there's like little particles that are suspended in the liquid. When you apply this to your chain, the liquid kind of flashes off, it evaporates, and all that's left are those little, like, I don't know if they're ceramic particles or whatever they are, but they're just left where they need to be. The chain stays clean. You don't get grease all over you. So that's a chain lube. You want to, I'll show you how to apply it when I pull that deal back out here. Let's talk about derailleurs real quick.
Oh, but can you also, is one I hear all the time, what about WD-40?
WD-40 is the lubrication that I used to use when I was a kid. Just spray that stuff all over my chain. It works. It will stop a squeaky chain, but it will not last. So the problem with WD-40 is it's not designed to have any staying power. It's not designed for what you're putting a chain through. So it'll get things unstuck, and it won't be dry, but it won't last. You'll have to reapply it. I would imagine that if you're here in this class, wanting to learn about how to take care of your bike, you're willing to spend the, $8 or $10 for a bottle of chain lube. Now, listen, I have a lot of bikes, and I lube my chains a lot, and I think I bought this like 4 years ago. Okay, so chain lube will last a long time, and you want to lube your chain. I don't want to say regularly, but you need to just check it to see if it's dry. The way I check my chain is I would just kind of like rub my finger underneath it, not on the outside plates. Again, we don't care about that, but I would rub it underneath and see if I got a little bit of lube on my finger from where the roller bearings are. And if you don't get any transfer onto your finger, your chain's probably dry. If you get transfer on your finger, you're probably good. You can go for a little bit longer. You can check that really quickly. And we'll just, let's see here. I don't know if you guys can see that on my finger. The stripes from that chain, I think that's borderline dry. So we'll put some lube on it, and I'll do that here in a second. While I have this screen close up, I want to show you guys derailleurs. Front derailleur. Most bikes will have a front derailleur and a rear derailleur. Here are two different front derailleurs. If you look at them, one has this clamp here, this ring that goes around your seat tube, and this one does not. So this is a clamp-on front derailleur. This is a braze-on front derailleur. They effectively are the same. They do the same thing. It's just the way they're mounted to the bike is a little bit differently. Okay, rear derailleur. This is a rear derailleur. It operates in several different ways. Let's see if I can grab this. It moves out like that. And then it also pivots like this, okay? It takes up chain and it moves across your cassette this way. Derailleurs have a couple of key things that I want to show you. First of all, these little pulleys, they're called jockey wheels, okay? They spin, they have engineered kind of sloppiness, okay? They're meant to kind of be a little sloppy. So if you're ever messing with your jockey wheels and you're like, oh my, this thing is slopping around, it's supposed to do that, okay? So be prepared for that. The teeth, you can look at your jockey wheel and you can see if your teeth are they're still in good shape. Here's a couple jockey wheels. I've never shown this here, but here's a jockey. There's a fresh jockey wheel, looks good. There's a jockey wheel that went through a couple hundred miles of nasty conditions. You'll see that it is shaped like a throwing star instead of having correctly shaped teeth. That jockey wheel needed to be replaced.
Can you do that behind a different background? Because you kind of can't see it. Yeah, there you go. Do it again. Yeah, that's better.
You see the difference. Jockey Wheel is supposed to have those squared off tops. This one is very pointed. The teeth are completely worn down. So you can check your jockey wheels and see what they look like. Other parts of a derailleur, you will have the binder bolt. That's where the cable runs through it and gets tightened down. Okay. This is the bolt that gets attached to your dropout, your derailleur hanger. That's where the derailleur actually gets attached. Here's another style derailleur that gets attached where the axle is. It's a bolt-on axle kind of derailleur. They're basically the same, except this one just doesn't have the hook. All right. You have a barrel adjuster right here, this black thing. Most rear derailleurs will have a barrel adjuster on it. This is how you do shifting adjustment, okay? If I were to spin this, you'll see the little silver barrel extend. Man, gotta get, okay, barrel extends, or if I spin it closed, you'll see that little silver barrel disappears. So that's the barrel adjuster. That is where all shifting adjustments happen. You'll also see on the back side of the derailleur, you'll see 3 Phillips screws. This one here, it's kind of tucked in, kind of hidden. This is called the B limit screw. This is what controls the pivot of the derailleur. Okay, that's all that does. I'd leave that alone. It should be set on your bike once your bike is built. So all that is, it adjusts the amount of pivot that the derailleur has. The other 2 Phillips screws, these here, are your limit screws. I refer to them as the off-limit screws. You'll see that they should be a little stamped letter, an H and an L. One is for the high limit screw and the other is for the low limit screw. Those are set to adjust how far the derailleur is allowed to move to the extremes. So low limit, it prevents it from shifting into your spokes. The high limit screw prevents it from shifting into your frame. Again, those should not be messed with. Those will just cause you problems if you adjust them because you're trying to just think that's how you're adjusting your shifting. Those are the off-limit screws. They should be set by whoever built your bike, and they really don't ever need to be touched. So this is the barrel adjuster. That's where all shifting adjustment happens. Front derailleur has the limit screws. Same limit screws, they do the same thing. They just set the limits. They don't affect the actual shifting adjustment. Front derailleurs do not have barrel adjusters. So all shifting adjustment usually happens near the shifter or in another way. Okay, those are derailleurs. Now let's talk about lubing a chain and shifting adjustment. Okay. This is my little shifting demonstration rig I have here. Okay. Now to lube a chain, what I want to do is the correct way to do it is to put a drop of lube on each roller bearing at each pin. So one drop, one drop, one drop. And if you can remember which link out of the 116 links on your bike that you started at, good for you. Do it one drop at a time. That's the best way to do it. If you can't remember where you started, then it's okay to open your little dripper and pedal the bike and drip a little bit of chain lube onto the rollers as they pass by. And if I go around a couple times, that's okay. So I have put chain lube on all of the chain. And what I'm going to do is after I do that, I just kind of shift the chain to kind of loosen it up, make it work a little sideways. What is that squeaking?
Oh, sorry. That might be like the yard work that's happening around me. I'll mute myself.
Okay, so after I lube the chain and then I kind of cycle it through the system a bit, this is the most important part of lubing a chain. Take an old rag and wipe it off. Wipe all the excess lube off. If you cycled it through the system several times, that lube is dropping down underneath those rollers. Okay, you're just trying to wipe off all the excess. Excess lube is just it's an attraction for dirt and grit, and it just will collect all that stuff as you're riding. So now let's see if my hands are clean enough to test this. If I run my hand underneath, there, I have fresh 2 lines of chain lube on my finger. I know that my chain is lubed, but it's not over lubed. It's not too greasy. So I don't feel like it's going to collect every bit of sand out there on the roads as I'm riding. So that's how you apply chain lube. Apply it, wipe it off, the excess. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about shifting and shifting adjustments. Was there a question? Did somebody have a question about how to actually like shift or when to shift? I think there was one of those on the questionnaire. We'll do a little demonstration.
I think we should cover that. Do you want me to pull up those diagrams, or you just want to demo it on that bike?
I don't know that we can see it. Let's pull up those diagrams if you can, and we'll talk about that real quick.
Give me just a second to figure that out.
So these diagrams we're going to show up are going to demonstrate a drivetrain system that has 3 chain rings in the front. These right here, these things attached to the crank arms that have teeth, these are the chain rings, all right? And a lot of bikes will have 3 chain rings, maybe a small ring, a middle ring, and your big ring. Other systems might have 2. Super modern systems are going to a single chain ring, okay? And then this in the back, all these gears in the back here, we call each individual gear, we call a cog. So individual cogs, and then the assembly of them all together is what we call the cassette, okay? So this is your rear derailleur that shifts the gears on your cassette. This is the front derailleur that shifts the gears on your chain rings. I want you to think of these as, this is your macro shifting, and these are your micro shifting. So for the most part, I would leave my chain in one of these chain rings and just kind of leave it there for most of my general riding. If you have a triple chain ring, I just leave it in the middle chain ring, and then you would do all of your shifting in the back. Okay, little gear changes for little undulations in the road would happen using your rear derailleur. Okay, the front would be.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to share the screen?
Yeah, bring it up now, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So the front would be your macro changes. So significant changes in grade or in the road. So let's see what Suzanne's got to show us. Okay, so there's an indication. It's not exactly to scale of what your triple chain ring would look like. Up in the top there, you have 1, 2, and 3, small chain ring, middle, and big chain ring. And on the bottom there, you have your cassette. And what this is showing you is if you were in your small chain ring, your ideal gears that you would want to be would be your more inboard cogs on your cassette also. Okay, so low gears. So so climbing a hill, if you want to just climb a steep hill, you'd be in your first gear up front, and you'd be in your kind of larger cogs, your lower gears in the back. Okay, next one. I think it's going to jump to, that's your big. Go 2 more, Suzanne. Next one. Okay, so here's your middle chain ring. This is kind of your meat and potatoes of your riding. Is you're going to be your middle chain ring, and then all those middle gears in your cassette in the back. You can pretty much handle most everything. For just kind of smooth riding around town. Now go up 2, Suzanne. Okay, so this is your high gear combination. So this is if you're going downhill, tailwind, you want to go super fast, you'll be in your big chain ring and you'll be in those smaller cogs, your higher gears in the back. And the reason I talked about the combinations from the front to the and the rear together is because go down 1. We talk about chain line. Okay, chain line is very important. If you are constantly cross-chaining your chain, which both of these images depict, is a chain that's being cross-chained, you are flexing the chain sideways, and that will wear out a chain pretty quickly when you force a chain to bend sideways like that. So if you are staying in your, on the left side here, if you're staying in your small chain ring, all right, but you want to use the full range of your cassette in the back, you're eventually going to be cross-chained. It's going to cause noise. It's going to cause other kinds of problems. And you would be better suited to put your chain into like the middle chain ring and have a straighter chain line and accomplish the same purpose. Same thing on the far right. You'd be big chain ring, which a lot of people do this. They're in their big chain ring and they're nervous or they don't like to shift the front derailleur. So they use all of the gears in the back, which is fine, but that number 1, big cog in the back is going to make a whole lot of noise. It'll cause maybe for some drop chains. It's stretching the chain sideways because it's cross chained. So what I'd like you guys to always be thinking about is, think about where you're at, use all the gears you have. There's no reason to stay in the big chain ring and cross chain the rear all the time. Shift into the smaller chain ring, keep a straighter chain line, and it'll be smoother. Your parts will last longer. It'll work better. Okay.
Can you talk about also when to shift? I think that's another thing. I live up on a hill and I cringe every time I hear people trying to shift while they're climbing.
Let me see if I can put my little diagram here up in the screen.
Okay, should I stop sharing?
Yeah, flip to my screen and we'll see if this works. Woo! I'm too close. Hang on, folks. All right, here we go. Here's my shifting.
A little further back.
There we go.
There you
Shifting demonstration. Very high tech. Okay, so we talk about high, medium, and low gear combinations. Your low gear is if you had this long hill that you needed to climb, I would want you to be in your small chain ring, okay, and be able to use all of the cogs in the back as you're climbing that hill. There's no reason to be in your big chain ring if you know you're going to be climbing a long hill. Your middle chain ring, if you're just doing some rollers, just a little undulation, you can probably stay in your middle chain ring and use your cassette to get up and down and be just fine. If you're on flats or if you're going to be doing a downhill, you could be in your big chain ring and you can use your high gears to go through those. So I want you to always be thinking about what you're approaching. If you know you're approaching this hill, well, shift into your low gear first. Shift into it before you get on the hill. What causes people problems is when they get up onto this hill about here, and then they realize, oh man, I'm not going to be able to make it, and they try to shift their front derailleur while they're under load, trying to resist gravity from pulling them back down, and bad things happen. So if you know that this hill is coming, shift into your low gears first before you get there, and you'll have a much more enjoyable experience than dropping a chain when you're trying to go up a hill, or you're finding out your front derailleur doesn't work when it's under load. So think about what's coming, shift ahead, anticipate that, and shift ahead of time. Does that make sense? Anybody got any questions?
No, but I'm really glad that we did this because I think a lot of the questions were about that, and some people were saying that they have problems just in one gear, which I think sometimes it's because they're in that cross-chained.
Yeah.
Position. So
Yeah, you don't want to be cross-chained. Let's see if I can spin this thing around so we can get a good look at the.
and I was gonna say, a lot of times if you're really new to bicycling, and I'll tell people this, just keep it in that keep it in that middle until you get really comfortable playing with the back to see what the high and low feels like. So yeah, or if you're riding with people who are new, that's one way to kind of encourage them to just start simply. And then if you're more experienced, then you could start doing some of the other diagrams that Mark was explaining.
Yeah, so I want you to anticipate. I see a lot of people on rides I do where they're just toughing it out, going up this long climb, and they're in their big chain ring, and they're maxed out in the back. They're in their lowest gear in the back, and I'm just thinking, man, shift that front derailleur. You're carrying that thing around with you. You've got a front derailleur. You have smaller chain rings in the front. Why don't you use them instead of grinding? And it's because they just feel like, I don't want to shift for what might be only a couple minutes. Well, I can tell you, shift and save yourself over those couple of minutes. Okay, let's talk about derailleur and shifting adjustment. So here I am spinning my not so very true tire here on here, and I'm hoping that this screen will be able to show us. I'm going to try to bring this in a little closer, as close as I can without hitting the tire, so we can look at barrel adjustments and shifting. Okay, so like I said, rear derailleur, if you're having problems with your shifting where it is I'm just gonna do something. You guys don't know what I'm doing. There we go. I'm gonna pedal here. Oh boy, did not do what I was hoping it would do. So there, I'm pedaling this bike, and it's making a whole lot of racket. It's just not kind of happy back there. And this happens quite a bit. Bicycles will go out of adjustment just through your cables stretching, your chain wearing, everything. So you need to kind of stay on top of it occasionally. And what I say is, if your bike is making noise, something needs to be adjusted, right? That's not normal. That's not something that you should just accept. If it's making noise, something needs to be adjusted. Now, I don't know if this is going to show well enough, but if you look behind your bicycle and you look at the cassette, your chain going from your cassette down through each jockey wheel, all right, they should be ideally perfectly in line. If you look back here and you see that, I think this is showing that this jockey wheel right here is further inboard than the chain. The chain kind of bends a little bit inboard. I think that's what that's showing. So that's going to be corrected using the barrel adjuster. So this barrel adjuster right here, if I want that chain to move outboard, right, I want it to come out here a little bit. What I want to do is I want to turn that barrel adjuster the direction that I want the chain to move. So if I want the chain to move out a little bit because I think it's rubbing up against, what just happened? Everything good?
Everything's good on my end. I think maybe there's just a hiccup.
Got a little beeps in my ear. Okay, so if I want to move the chain outboard, I will turn the barrel adjuster the direction I want it to move, the direction I want the chain to move. Let me step over here so I'm actually on the same side. You guys, I'm not in your way. Okay. So still making noise. Now it's quiet. So let me demonstrate that backwards again. So I'm going to dial this barrel adjuster around this way, and you will hear the chain start to make noise. It's very unhappy because it's rubbing up against this next cog up here. So in order to correct that, I dial the barrel adjuster out and the chain stays quiet. And every time I shift, it goes where I want it to go when I want it to go there. If it was out of adjustment, I'm going to take it out of adjustment again. It wouldn't shift as quickly as I want it to shift. It's like it's not quite getting up there. So I just turned the barrel adjuster and I made it do what it's supposed to do. I've got that squeak somewhere. I gotta figure out what that squeak is. It's a demonstration bike. It doesn't get ridden. So any shifting adjustment that needs to be made in the rear needs to be done here at this barrel adjuster. And I want you to be able to look at it visually. I want you to see what the chain is doing. The chain should be riding exactly in the middle of the cogs above and below the chain, if that makes any sense. The chain is riding on one cog and it should be in the middle of the cogs to the inside and the outside of it. It should not be rubbing up against the next cog. That's what causes the noise. So you will use the barrel adjuster to move the derailleur whatever direction you turn the barrel adjuster, and that will move the chain to make it straight up and down. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
So we talked about limit screws. The limit screws prevent the derailleur from over shifting outward. The high limit screw would prevent the derailleur from shifting out into the frame, and the low limit screw would prevent the chain from shifting into the spokes. So if you mess with those, you will potentially allow the derailleur to do something that it shouldn't do. So all adjustments at the barrel adjuster. And then what else can I show with this? It's really it. That's adjustment of that's derailleur adjustment. If your bike is making noise, something needs to be adjusted. If it's not shifting cleanly, or if it's rubbing up against something while you're pedaling, it most likely is the barrel adjustment. Front derailleur, if it is rubbing against your front derailleur cage, there should be a barrel adjuster somewhere in your system, and you can adjust that front derailleur just the same way you do here by adding or releasing tension. If you guys can see this, I'm moving that derailleur just by pulling on the cable. That's all it is. Okay, that's it. I'm going to move on to what time is it? Hey, we're about right on time.
1:23.
All right. Okay. I'm going to move away from shifting. And I'm going to show you a couple other things that I want you guys to be aware of. Quick releases. Some of your bikes will have a quick release that holds the front or rear wheel on. This is a standard looking quick release. This lever here, when you move it, it moves this kind of end just a little bit. If you can see that, that's what that lever does. Quick releases will come in two different sizes. If you can see that, one is shorter than the other, and that's not just because I have it forward or back. This is a front. Your shorter one is the front quick release. The longer one is the rear quick release. Okay. What parts of the quick release you'll have this end cap that you screw on or off. Okay, this is how you adjust it to be tighter or looser. And then you have these springs. You'll notice the orientation of the springs. The pointed end of the springs should point in towards the axle. The fatter end of the springs should hide up in the caps. If you have those backwards, that will cause you some problems reinserting your wheel into the frame or into the fork. So make sure your springs are pointing in. Now, in the event that you take your quick release off and you lose one of these springs, it is not the end of the world. These springs are non-essential. They're just a convenience part for you to center the quick release. So if you lose one, no sweat, move on without it, but make sure that they are pointed in, okay, and that the fat end goes up into the end of the quick release. And then when you adjust your quick release, you want to move the lever to tighten. You do not want to use the lever just to continue to spin until it gets tight. That is not effective. You want to move the lever up and into a locked position. So that will keep the wheels in your frame. Let's talk about real quick, if you have a, I guess we're talking about quick releases. If you have a bike with a rear quick release and you want to take this rear wheel out of the frame, a couple things I want you to do first. If you ever need to take the rear wheel out of the frame, I want you to shift into your smallest little cog. First thing you do, I don't care where you're at, you shift into the smallest cog. That does two things. It moves the chain as far out as possible, and it also puts it in a cog that you can remember which one it was in. If you leave it in the middle of the cassette, when you go to put your wheel back in, you might not remember exactly what cog it was in, and that's just going to cause you some problems. But smallest cog, get it all the way out of the way. Release your brakes with that this thing is really fighting me today. Okay, in order to take this out, watch this carefully. You will release the quick release. Okay, I want you to put your thumb on the back part of the derailleur. The derailleur has that little kind of bridge, that metal bridge across the back of it. Put your thumb on that, and then put your fingers up here on the derailleur. You can take this out without touching the chain. You can just pivot that out of the way. My hand was in the way. You can pivot this without ever touching the chain. You can take a wheel out without getting your hands all greasy. So I took the rear wheel out. You did whatever you needed to do with it. In order to reinsert it, I want you to move the derailleur. Okay, I want you to stick that wheel inside of the chain. You can see there's a chain above and below. I want you to put the chain on the small cog and lift it straight back up into the frame. And then you can let go of your derailleur and tighten that quick release, and it's back in. I never touched the chain. Took the wheel out, never touched the chain. Okay, another tip here. If you are riding your bicycle and you do find that you have a problem with your front derailleur and you drop your chain, you shift it and your chain drops, and that sucks. What I want you to do is I want you to just relax for a second, realize what you did, and while you're still rolling on the road, let's see if I can throw this chain off real quick. Okay, you can see the chain is not connected, right? I just dropped my chain. You're still rolling. You haven't lost all of your momentum yet. I want you to use your front shifter, and I want you to shift your front shifter until your chain rings grab that chain and pick it back up. I just put the chain back on without ever touching it. Okay, I want you to think about that. If you ever drop a chain, use the derailleur to put it back on while you're still rolling. I'll demonstrate that again just real quick. It's off. If I use the derailleur and keep pedaling, I can pick it back up. I've seen a lot of people totally panic, stop their bike, get off, and then get their hands all greasy, stabbing themselves with their chain rings, trying to put their chain back on when all they could do is use their derailleur to put it on for them. Okay, that's really all I've got. I think we've covered everything on
Wow,
my,
Mark, right at 1:30. That's
yeah,
really
right?
good. Um, so I guess I just wanted to say, there, I hope we were able to cover most of it. If you get a chance, check out the answered section in the Q&A feature. We can give like 5 minutes for some other just quick things that people want to pop up in chat or the Q&A. But otherwise, I'd really, now that you've done this beginner, I guess more maintain your ride course for free through Johnson County Public Library, we are going to be offering, if you say have a more specific issue. I don't know if any of you guys are like public radio people, but remember like car talk? Well, we're going to be doing bike talk on Monday from 1 to 3, basically 15-minute appointments where you can sign up. I think we're asking a suggested donation for I think $5. We'll send an email out soon after this, but basically what the idea is that you can set up an appointment with me and Mark. We can have you on Zoom, and you can even have your bike pulled up to ask a more specific question. Or I know someone asked about seats or like certain tools or advice on where to ride on trails, or if you're having just I can't get the brake realigned or whatever, more specific stuff. Then we can do that through those one-on-one appointments. So I just launched a poll to kind of get, and I am seeing a lot of all of the above. So if that is something, choosing just one thing and make an appointment for that. And so check your inbox within the next little bit here, and we'll be sending out the information of how you can sign up for those bike talk sessions. And other than that, we'll just give the next 5 minutes for any other little Q&A, more general Q&A. But if it's really specific, like I said, going more to the bike talk format, you'll get a lot more out of it, I think. And I was mentioned in the chat, but I do also want to say this recording will be available for you to be able to use for your reference, and also that PowerPoint that I pulled up earlier. So say if there's like a particular thing that, you know, it's easier to watch as you go, you'll be able to do that as well. So yeah, thanks. Like I said, we'll just give it about 5 minutes here. And other than that, I just say, sign up for the bike talk appointments.
No questions?
There have been a lot of questions in the, oh man, okay. Well, there's been a lot of questions answered in the Q&A about little shifting things or about bike stands. There's a lot of stuff in there. Ben G saw my band a while ago, so that's kind of funny. Cool. Oh, cool. And also as part of the board of Lawrence Unchained. So I think that's also a bicycle organization. So yeah, Benji, hit me up. I'm not sure the best way to do that. Here, I'm going to put my Bike Walk email in the answered section too, if anyone wants to get in touch. And like I said, check out your inbox to set up a bike talk appointment. Otherwise, we're going to just end this. If no one has, I'll give you like 2 more minutes to put something up in the Q&A or the chat. Okay, so we got one question. I have those hydraulics, or you have hydraulics? Hydraulic on a hybrid? Like, Melissa, is
Yeah,
it?
that's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the newer hybrids.
No, I
are
think you
gonna
mean
be,
shocks. Yeah.
Oh, shocks. Okay.
And they're locked out. Do I need to do anything to keep moving? Okay. It depends on what kind they are. Or they can't lock out. Well, that's actually common too. A lot of them aren't designed to be adjusted if they're of a certain quality.
Yeah,
What?
so a
Go ahead.
full lockout fork will be kind of a higher end fork. Most of the forks that are on your hybrid type bikes will not have a true lockout. You can adjust the rebound maybe, but to be able to lock out the fork so it's absolutely stiff and rigid, it's going to be on the higher end forks to have that mechanism.
You might be finding too, I've found if that's something that you don't like, it's like, well, maybe that's not, maybe you don't want shocks. So maybe it's time to replace your fork, which is a little bit more of a complicated repair. Or just more, it'd be harder to maybe do at home, or you'd want to at least get some guidance from a mechanic at a shop to make sure you get the right thing. But it doesn't.
Replacing a fork with a rigid fork is going to
Yeah,
be
you'd
tough.
probably just want to replace it with, like, I've replaced mine with like a steel fork because I didn't like it. But she's asking, doesn't it slow you down on trails? It slows you down while you're like, it does slow you down, but it's designed to absorb shock. I mean, that's kind of, I wouldn't say it like slows you down a lot.
No, the only thing that slows you down is if you were to get out of the saddle and you start like putting your weight on the bike, the fork will compress and absorb some of that power, I guess, you're putting to the pedals. But if you're just sitting down riding, the shock really won't slow you down other than just the inherent weight of the shock causing the bike to be a little heavier and therefore maybe a little slower in certain circumstances, but not necessarily just slowing the bike down. No.
Yeah. And then we got a comment from Doug, and all I'm going to say to that is go Royals. Sorry, man, but we're glad to have you here. He's joined us from New York City. But yeah, for real, if you guys do want to, if you want to get a little more in the weeds and kind of like show us what's going on with your bike, like I said, please sign up for the Bike Talk thing. Super reasonable, especially with this time, like where people are riding more and a lot of bike shops are really overwhelmed. There are a lot of like really basic things you can be doing at home, and we can help you guys do that. So just feel free to sign up for those. You should be getting the invite in just a little bit here. And I think with that, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and end this.
Good, because my earphones are about to run out of battery.
All right, cool. Thank you all for attending, and happy riding and ride safe. And maybe we'll bike talk on Monday. All right, bye.
Bye.